Hello, Sploresville. It's a brisk day today with mottled clouds and the flirtation of spring. The polling for the new mascot has created quite a stir in town. And down at Dez's Dairy Mart, Erin Armstrong posted a picture of a dandelion in the window to show her support. The store was named after Erin's mother, Desiree, and it's always been a true dairy. It still has milk in glass bottles and 10 flavors of ice cream that haven't changed since I was a kid. There's other things to buy in there, of course, mostly dry goods, and 2 full aisles of cereal, which are organized in the strangest way. When he was younger, Stephen Amichin used to come into the store in the mornings and buy as many bazooka bubblegums as he could afford with his allowance money. And then he'd distribute them to his friends and some of the folks that he wanted to be his friends in home economics class. But when he walked in this morning, he stopped at the display of mini packaged donuts and cupcakes and just stood there. Now, Erin had been minding the store for a number of years since her mother passed and changed the name from Deserts, which she thought sounded a bit confusing, to what it is now, Dez's. But she'd seen Stephen grow up. There was a single booth, a hardtop booth, that was scooted up against one of the large pane windows towards the parking lot, and he had sat there with his friends. In the beginning, when she took over the store, Erin chatted with a lot of the customers, but over time, she kind of stopped that and listened instead. She was at the front counter stocking gum when Stephen came in and was immediately reminded of a time when Stephen must have been a teenager and was sitting in that booth with a friend and was talking about a news story that he had just read. It was about a man who had lived most of his life alone up near Burn Mountain, and he was discovered deceased by his neighbors. He was quite old at that point, and it looked like he had a peaceful going. The neighbors all rallied together and raised some money for a funeral, and then went through the house and cleaned it up for a reception of sorts. In doing that, they found a map, and that map led them to a tunnel. And it turned out this old gentleman had been digging a tunnel into Burn Mountain for what looked like years. It was a full quarter mile when they found it, and had been dug by hand and reinforced with wood. Another 100 yards or so, and he would have broken through, about 40 feet up a cliff's edge overlooking a forest. Stephen had thought that story was so cool, and Erin had figured that he was right around that age where things that don't make sense sound so cool. But right now, Stephen's eyes were red, and Erin kind of looked up and said, "You crying?" And Stephen said, "Yeah, I don't want to buy anything." And she said, "You don't have to." And then he told her that he'd been left, and that the person who left him had gone off to college to study English, which made sense except for the fact that it had never been brought up that Stephen might come along. And he hadn't brought it up either, and that's how it was between them as he helped with the packing and even planned a going-away party. "Well, fuck," Erin said. And then she said, "You want to see what I do sometimes?" And Stephen nodded. She went over to the cleaning closet and got out a couple rags and laid them next to each other in one of the aisles. She laid down on one on her back and motioned for Stephen to do the same thing, and he did it, hesitating at first because it was a little weird. And then Erin raised her knees up just a little bit and pressed her feet against the floor, so she kind of scooched backwards down the aisle just a little at a time. And from that perspective, Stephen looked up and he saw that Erin had arranged the cereal boxes so they formed clusters of colors and patterns, and all the characters on those cereal boxes were looking down at them and smiling. And they floated down that aisle on their backs for a while, and it felt like they were in a parade, being cheered on by tigers and captains and rabbits. Well, in any case, the dandelion that Erin had posted in that window seemed to have some effect. That particular sketch of a mascot had been left out of the polling due to a clerical error. But with a groundswell of public support, it ended up second in the polling, right behind the maidmer, the reverse mermaid. In third was the cuttlefish, followed by the robin. With the voting irregularities as they were, it's been suggested that we have a runoff for these top 4. But in order to do that, we're going to need to see some variations or refinements on these themes. We're not just going to run the same 4 sketches against each other. Anyone can take a stab at their favorite, and you can submit it to the email below. As for next week, let's find out.